Hello my friends, Amy Esther here with another video, and today I want to share with you all about chronic fatigue syndrome. What is it? How do you get diagnosed? What are the symptoms? How do you treat it? All those things we're going to talk about today. If you guys are new here, I'm Amy Esther, and clearly I have chronic fatigue syndrome, or I probably wouldn't be making this video, but I have a lot of chronic fatigue. Oh, so much. And I have several other chronic illnesses. So here on YouTube, I share my life with chronic illness, how I do all the things while living with chronic pain and chronic fatigue. And I would love if you joined me for some of my other videos. You're welcome to subscribe if you want to hear more about life with chronic illness. If you want to hear more about my chronic illnesses specifically, I have links in the description below where you can learn all about them, or my whole channel is filled with tons of videos about life with chronic fatigue and my other chronic illnesses. So if you're interested in that, head over to my channel and check out some of my other videos. But today, we're going to talk about chronic fatigue syndrome. So chronic fatigue syndrome has this big, long, fancy name, and honestly, I don't even know how to actually pronounce it. So here is the name of chronic fatigue syndrome. The fancy name, again, I don't really know how to pronounce it. So I just call it CFS or chronic fatigue syndrome because, yeah, I'm not that smart. But basically, chronic fatigue syndrome is feeling an excessive amount of fatigue that doesn't go away with rest. That's kind of the general idea of what chronic fatigue syndrome is. You just kind of feel fatigued and tired all the freaking time, all the time. So to get diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, it's kind of tricky because there's not a test. There's not a blood test that you can do. You can't see it on an MRI. The way to get diagnosed is typically you have a lot of fatigue and you have all the symptoms of chronic fatigue syndrome, and you've been tested for a bunch of different things, and you can't really come to any conclusion of why you're so fatigued. That's sort of how you get a diagnosis. If you got one differently, let me know in the comments, but from what I've heard, that's typically, it's just symptoms and it's nothing else, so it's chronic fatigue syndrome, which is a little frustrating when you kind of want to have an official blood test say, yes, it's chronic fatigue syndrome, and here's the blood levels to tell you exactly what, how much fatigue you have. And for me, I have a hard time not having a blood test to tell me yes, you have this, but that's just kind of how it is with chronic fatigue syndrome. Same thing with fibromyalgia. And fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome sometimes go hand in hand. A lot of people have both. I have both. Fibromyalgia is typically more pain-centered, and then chronic fatigue is obviously more fatigue-centered. It's more focused on fatigue. Fibromyalgia is kind of more pain. So I actually have a whole video all about fibromyalgia. I will link it in the description below if you're interested in that. But a lot of people have both. And sometimes you have a lot of other chronic illnesses going on with your chronic fatigue syndrome, which is in my case, and a lot of people I know, they'll have a lot of things going on, including chronic fatigue syndrome. So chronic fatigue syndrome, again, it's hard to get a definitive diagnosis, but it's a real thing. It's a real thing that happens, and it is really hard to deal with. So causes. What causes chronic fatigue syndrome? Now, I personally am not a doctor. I am a woman who suffers from chronic fatigue syndrome and shares my story on YouTube, and I can't, of course, diagnose you or tell you anything besides research I've done and my own experience. So from research I've done and my own experience, I have not seemed to come across any specific causes of chronic fatigue syndrome. Generally, there's a few things that I've seen from my friends who have chronic fatigue syndrome, and some things I've gone through and research I've done is viruses, particularly Epstein-Barr virus, which is the monovirus. A lot of people with chronic fatigue syndrome have had that virus. It also could be something that's genetic. Maybe your parents or your grandparents had chronic fatigue syndrome and now you have it, or you have it and your son or daughter has it. It does seem like it does run in families. From what I've seen in friends and people who have it, typically, it could also be from stress. Like the more stress you have, the more likely you are to develop chronic fatigue syndrome. So those are kind of some of the factors that I've seen, as well as a weakened immune system. A lot of people who have a weaker immune system are more likely to have chronic fatigue. So again, I don't know of a specific cause, and I've never heard of one. But those are the typical things that I've heard of that usually cause chronic fatigue syndrome. So the symptoms of chronic fatigue syndrome are, of course, chronic fatigue, meaning fatigue that doesn't go away with rest, fatigue that stays for a long time. Every day you feel fatigued. It might come and go. You might feel really fatigued in the morning, and then it gets a little better in the afternoon, and then it comes back, and then gets a little better before bed, or like kind of waves up and down. It also could be that you're really fatigued for a week, and then you feel a little better the next week, and then it comes back. Or you have a month where you're just constantly fatigued, and then it gets a little bit better over the next few months, and then it comes back. Or any type of chronic fatigue would be a symptom of chronic fatigue syndrome, clearly. And then feeling extra tired, like you could feel like physically tired. You also might feel like sleepy tired, like you just can't get enough sleep. A lot of people with chronic fatigue syndrome also have insomnia, meaning not only do they not feel rested if they do get sleep, but they have a hard time getting good sleep as well, which is just a endless circle of awfulness, because you're having a hard time sleeping, and then having a hard time sleeping is what makes you fatigued, and then it just keeps going around and around, and it can be really hard. But that's pretty common with people who have chronic fatigue. They also probably have pain. Might be muscle pain, like achiness. You might have more headaches. You might have fibromyalgia, which causes lots and lots of pain. But typically you'll have lots of fatigue and some pain with it. A lot of people who have chronic fatigue have a lot of brain fog, trouble concentrating, trouble remembering things. That one can be really hard, and I definitely deal with that on a regular basis, and I know a lot of you guys do too. Or your brain, it just seems like it is not working for you, and you can't remember anything, even things that were 5 minutes ago. You look at an object and you don't remember what it's called. Lots of memory problems, concentration problems, and brain fog. Typically, people with chronic fatigue syndrome have a really hard time exercising, or have like exercise intolerance. They feel worse after they exercise, especially if they do like intense exercising, because again, they're fatigued. It's hard to exercise when you're fatigued, and then you end up getting more fatigued. So you'll have, maybe your muscles will be extra sore and you'll be extra fatigued after exercising. That's pretty common. And then as well as, unfortunately, anxiety and depression often go along with chronic fatigue syndrome. And that has been, I swear, a symptom of every chronic illness that I have ever talked about on my channel. And I think it's just because living with chronic fatigue and chronic pain is so hard, and it can just make you extra depressed and extra anxious, and your brain is, again, not always working perfectly, and it can cause those mental disorders, which can be really, really hard to deal with. So if you're suffering from that, I am so sorry, but that is a symptom of chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, let's talk about what can you do about it? What are some treatments for chronic fatigue syndrome? So, of course, resting can help you. However, I've noticed with me, sometimes I think I need to rest more than I actually do. And I actually feel better when I rest for a little bit, and then I get up and move for a little bit. And then I rest for a little bit, and then I get up and move for a little bit. Resting too long, in my case, from my own experience, sometimes makes me worse. and I feel more fatigued the longer I lay there. So I will lay there for an hour or two, and then I'll get myself up and I'll take 5 or 10 minutes and I'll just try to move around. And if I start to feel better, I'll keep moving around for a little bit. If I start to feel worse, then I'll lay back down for another hour and then I'll try again. But try not to just lay around all day long, even though you are so fatigued and it's so hard, because it really will make it better if you get up and move a little bit. Going along with that is exercise. And I know we just talked about, well, exercise intolerance is a symptom of chronic fatigue syndrome. Why would you exercise? But if you do moderate, like just some mild exercising every single day, it can really help you. So go for a walk, lift some light weights, do a few machines at the gym, do the elliptical. Maybe you take a yoga class or Tai Chi, I don't know, something that's just a little gentler, not like a high fit class or going on a run. Those kind of things can make you a lot worse. So I would stick with more mild exercising, but you definitely want to exercise. Like I just talked about with, resting and then getting up and moving and resting and moving. Moving does help. It's just that oftentimes when we think exercise, we think, well, my heart rate has to be pumping super hard and I have to be sweating bullets. But when you have chronic fatigue syndrome, that typically makes you worse. At least that is how it is for me. So I like to exercise every day, but I do pretty moderate exercising. I don't go crazy. I don't lift insanely heavy weights. I don't go on 10-mile runs. In fact, I don't run at all. I don't take those intense cardio classes. I do the gentle stuff, but I do it regularly and I do it every day, and it helps so much. Another thing is you need to eat healthy. A healthy diet, a diet low on like highly inflammatory foods like sugar and caffeine and anything that's in a box, I would probably avoid. Healthy diets just help so much. If you have other things going on, maybe you want to be on a paleo diet. Maybe a keto diet is right for you. Maybe the autoimmune protocol diet is right for you. If you have other things going on, something more restrictive might help. But if you are dealing with just chronic fatigue, I shouldn't say just chronic fatigue because it's awful, but I'm saying like chronic fatigue, but you don't have an autoimmune disorder or anything else going on, I would say eat healthy. And sometimes I say this and I think I have to like explain about it, but I feel like we all know how to eat healthy. Eat your vegetables, your fruits, limit processed foods, limit like white carbs, have more fiber, have more lean meats, right? I think people know how to eat healthy. It's just hard to do. So I would put yourself on a healthy diet or a healthy lifestyle plan. If you don't like the word diet, just start to eat healthier. So you want to make sure your physical health is taken care of with exercise and diet. And the other part of it is you want to make sure your emotional, your mental health is also in a good place, because your mental state, we kind of talked about this with the anxiety and things, your mental state can make you feel a lot worse. If you are really stressed all the time and you're dealing with a lot of anxiety, you're going to have more pain, you're going to have more fatigue. So you need to watch your mental limits. Like, how far can you go? Do you have a really stressful job? I would suggest trying to get out of that job, trying to find something that's less stressful. Maybe you are just naturally kind of a stressed out person. That's how I am. It's like I can find stress in anything. And I've just found ways to help calm me down. So I do yoga, meditation. I go on, maybe like go get some fresh air, go on a walk. I will talk to someone. For me, talking things out really helps. Clearly, I like to talk. I create YouTube videos every week, but that really helps reduce my stress. Going to bed at a decent hour helps. Going along with that is sleep. Make sure you get good sleep, and that will help your stress as well. But I know we just talked about you have a lot of insomnia when you have chronic fatigue syndrome, but try to find ways to sleep better. There's lots of things you can do. I just got a really nice bed. I have an adjustable bed. I have a purple mattress, and I'm not saying that's like the mattress to buy, or they're not sponsoring this or anything, but I just love my bed. And for me, the mattress is really nice. Like, I do love my purple mattress, but the reason my bed is so comfortable to me is because of the adjustable part. We got like the adjustable base, and I lift up my head and my feet, and it just is so comfortable. And I try to sleep in a really comfortable environment. So I spend a lot of money on my bedding because it helps me sleep, and it's like my medicine is to sleep better. And so to me, those kind of things are important to invest in. Things that will help you feel less stressed. So something that helps me feel less stressed is to have a clean house. So I started investing in furniture and things around my house that keep my house cleaner. I did a big sweep and got rid of a bunch of stuff that I really didn't need that was just cluttering up my house. So doing things like that, what is your stress? Maybe a messy house doesn't bother you, but where you're working bothers you, and you get so stressed out with work. Try to find a job that's less stressful. Just try to find ways in your life where you can reduce stress and you can sleep better, because that is your medicine, my friend, and you want to be able to do that. You could also go to counseling, go to some therapy sessions. Maybe you have a life coach that you can talk to. Anything like that can help you reduce your mental pain, which will help all of your physical pain. So those are my tips for you on what to do if you have chronic fatigue syndrome. If you guys have any other information about chronic fatigue syndrome, any other treatments that you have tried that have worked, let me know in the comments below. I'm also very curious. Do you guys have multiple chronic illnesses, or do you have chronic fatigue syndrome only and nothing else? Because it seems like most of the people I talk to have multiple things going on. So I'm just interested. What are you guys going through? Is it chronic fatigue syndrome? Do you also have fibromyalgia? Do you also have POTS? Like, what is going on for you? Let me know in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. That really helps my channel. It tells YouTube that you guys are enjoying my content. It tells me that you're enjoying it and that you want more. So make sure you thumbs up this video. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, make sure you hit that little subscribe button. There's a little button next to it that's a little bell. If you hit that, it will notify you every time I post a new video about life with chronic illness and chronic fatigue. So if you want to know how to do all the things, make sure you turn on that bell. All right, you guys. Tired. Chronic fatigue syndrome, it's tiring. Anyway, I'm tired. I hope you guys are laying down for this whole video. I'm going to go lay down now, and I will see you guys next time.